relax.
Relax.
Yeah,
Love
I used to
it.
have those in a primary school as a little kid.
Oh,
They're
really?
very, very, yet very communistic, like 1980s mugs from the cheapest ceramic that you can find. And now they're like back trendy in Poland for like very hippie style. So I got one for myself. And the Relax is, by the way, a cinema from Warsaw, from our capital city.
Oh,
So
that's wonderful.
yeah.
I'm not as well equipped as you. I just have the WeWork cup.
Hey, oh yeah, because you are in WeWork right now.
Absolutely, yeah, the Paris WeWork.
How do you like their spaces, by the way?
I love WeWork. I just love the simplicity. Every time I go to New York or like Australia, like the WeWork is always the same. It's great.
Wait, so you have access to all of their places?
Yeah, yeah, I've got like because I have a private office here, and so you get credits, and so anytime you travel, I can just when I go
Ah.
to Lisbon or London, I can just drop into the that WeWork, and it's all very familiar.
Is there something particular that you like about co-working spaces?
I I love the energy of everyone just really striving really hard for thing. Like I love the fact if I come here on Sunday afternoon and
Yeah.
like I'm just gonna be honest, I don't think France is like the hardest working country I've ever lived in.
Okay. Okay.
But if I come here on a Sunday, I love the fact that there's people just squirreling away,
Everyone's
and
hustling. Yeah. Uh,
I love that energy.
oh my god, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like sometimes when I work from home for too long, the kind of, I don't know if I can call it loneliness, but that kind of feeling of being alone and all that chaos settles in, and it also drives it kind of, it instills that sense of panic. And then when I even connect with you like here
Absolutely.
now, or then go to co-working space, I see like everyone's doing the same. I'm fine. Like I find that anchoring very calming. And
It
I
is. It
guess
is.
that's why networking, any kind of social interaction, is useful in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think through COVID, everyone was like, let's be really efficient and cut out all these unnecessary interactions we don't need. But I think psychologically, these second and tertiary interactions that we have are actually really important for our psyche and really help balance and stabilize us. I still think like humans are fundamentally like tribal creatures. I think
Yeah,
we need to feel connected
yeah.
to the greater society. So I know what you mean. When I'm at home just working, I do get that feeling where I'm like, oh, I've forgotten how to interact with others.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And just keep in mind that what I said comes from an introverted person, and so it is really true. It really is. So I can't even imagine what it's like to for extroverted people being sat at home for too long. Uh, but you know,
That's funny. Yeah,
I
I think that a lot of my extroverted friends have specifically said they need jobs with offices, like
oh,
they
they do.
don't thrive
All
at home.
right.
Yeah,
Wow. I
it's
never
quite funny.
expected anyone to say this today.
I
Yeah.
have friends with fully remote gigs, very cushy, like multiple six-figure remote cushy gigs, and they're just
Yeah.
like, nah, can't stand it, need to go back to the office. And I'm like, you do you.
Oh wow. Well, I heard this huge outcry on LinkedIn about Amazon forcing people to go back to the office. So I wonder how bad that it actually is, because obviously, I mean, LinkedIn is an echo chamber, and if people are negative about going back to the office, that's all they're gonna see. But I would love to know what it actually is like for people who don't take part in a conversation online, because from
Mm.
based on what you said, there's at least one person that loves the idea of going back to the office.
Yeah, I feel like it's for me, my network seems to be split 50-50. Some of my friends, like kicking, you'd have to drag them back kicking and screaming to an office. And yeah, the others really, really need an office environment too. I think it's the guardrails for them to get the best of their productivity, the best
Hmm.
of their energy. So it's interesting. I think also part of it comes from deeply knowing yourself and like how you best operate. But I think that flexibility is key. So I wouldn't like it if I had to be somewhere 5 days a week for set hours. I think, a couple of days flexibility is really important, especially when you've got other responsibilities and things you need to care for.
Yeah, I think we stopped associating office hours with strict 9 to 5. I think it's just I guess, day out, and you show up in the office, but you're okay to go on to a gym at 10 a.m. or like just do you, but as long as the job is done. Like it,
Oh,
that's
I think that's interesting that you say that. Like, just to go on a cultural tangent, I've observed
yeah.
that office culture is just so different in each country that I've lived in. So, for example, you could probably get away with that in Australia, but you probably wouldn't be getting like the top promotion at the end of the year. You would probably be seen as someone just cruising.
Oh really?
Um, yeah, I think you can probably do that in some places in New York, but I wouldn't stretch it. I wouldn't push it, and I don't think you could really, from what I've observed here in Paris, I think they're very classical in the way that you've got your hours, and I probably wouldn't go to the gym at 10 if I were to like work at a company here.
Huh.
But it seems like London, I feel like London's very like progressive in that way, especially in the like in the startup community.
Oh wow. So even tech companies?
I guess tech companies is a bit different because I think they've got more of a flexible working policy where you don't have to be in the office all the time. But from what I observe of my peers who are working for like in like luxury or like actuarial science, I think they go dressed to the nines. They look really good. They have their set hours. Like it's still classical.
Wow. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I. That's very interesting. Hmm. Well, the way I look at the office is, it's my day out, and I go to the office, but at the same time, I grab barber because it's next door. I go to the gym because it's also next door, and then at the end of the day, once I'm done with all the errands and the work itself, I head back home happy.
Oh my
And
gosh. I
yeah,
love your life. That sounds great. I need to have more of that rhythm.
yeah.
I get really guilty if I do errands during work hours.
Oh,
So
you do? Oh, I don't think
yeah.
you should. It helps with the mental space. I think it's. I don't know. I like those breaks.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
as long as
Yeah.
you're honest with yourself that this is the block of time when I do X, this is for Y, this is for Z, and you do everything you can to fit as much work as possible related to those blocks of time. I think you're good. Like you shouldn't feel guilty or anything.
So I'm curious, when do you go to the gym? Do you go to the gym at 10?
Mm-hmm.
How often do you go?
5 times a day, a
Oh, I
day,
love
a
this.
week, a week.
I love this. Okay, so you go from 10 to 11. And is the
Yeah,
gym
yeah.
near your office?
It's about 10, not well. Gym is 90 minutes roughly. So I'm back from gym, have a quick meal, and then I'm back at the computer at 12.
Okay, and then when does your workday end?
Usually around 4 5. So I start.
Oh,
So I start 7 a.m. But
oh,
yeah.
okay, you start
Sorry,
early.
I'm from Poland. This is what we do. 7 a.m. is the normal work shift.
Wait,
Uh,
so what time do you get up?
at 5:30.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's
Every
crazy.
day. My Apple Watch has the alarm clock set in stone every single day.
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, okay. I have a very different rhythm to you. It's quite fascinating.
it,
I'll
it
probably,
is. I think we all
yeah,
do.
yeah, I probably wake up at 9. And I'll stroll into the office at like 10.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'll have like an hour lunch break as well. But I think
Yeah,
because my hours are a bit different, that's why each hour I'm not here to fuck spiders. Like
yeah, yeah.
I'm really on it. And then I clock off at like, anywhere from like 5, 6, 7, 8, depending on
That's
the day.
fine. I mean, you do you. If it works for you, perfect. That's it. Like all I
Yeah.
care about is business, health, and self development. And if I can have those three areas fit into every single day, I'm happy.
Well, one thing I love about your routine, which I haven't quite fit into mine, which is why I was asking, is the gym time. I haven't been able to properly slot it into its own place, so it has its own
Okay.
place.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
just curious to see how everyone does it because, I honestly don't know how people in this day and age eat right, sleep right, go to the gym,
It
have
is
friends.
tough.
I'm just like, my goodness. And then
Yeah.
like my friends who have children, I'm just like, hats off to you. Like
Absolutely.
it's
Oh
so
yeah,
so many things to juggle.
I can't even imagine dropping kids into the mix. It's I don't know
It,
how you handle that. And
something has to go.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, times you mentioned diet. I cook on Sunday for the whole 5 days of the week.
Interesting. You prep.
Yeah,
Yeah, you've got
so it's like a
that classic like meal prep
bulk
routine.
meal prep. Yeah, and I have very simple recipes, like literally 4 ingredients. So it's like 20 25 minutes for
What,
meal.
like chicken breast and broccoli,
Basic. Well, yeah. I mean, this is a very
tuna,
classical
sweet
example.
potato.
Yeah. I guess for example, I have pasta with cottage cheese.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Interesting.
Like, I mean, there's like onion and some spices to it, but it is essentially dumplings, but like
Hmm.
flipped outside, right?
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
yeah, it's
Interesting. I
very
think
simple. Anyway, I'll be very happy to share all the meals I have. Like, I've over the years I've got like 200 recipes maybe that I like. So I just every week I just click four of them and I just order groceries online and that's it.
wow, you have really optimized a lot of your life. Do you have like a second brain as well? Did you set up the second brain? Do you know what I mean? With like, it's like this
Not really.
productivity hack thing that people were really into like a year ago, where they were like using Notion and other tools to like set up the
No,
second brain where everything, where all
no.
your recipes stored, like Notion or
Just Google Drive, man.
Google Drive. Love this.
the, the
Simple.
simplest you can go. I like simplicity. So that's
I'm
really
a
it.
huge fan of Google Drive, so
Oh yeah,
preaching
absolutely.
to the choir.
Absolutely, Google Drive and Google Sheets are my favorite because in Google Sheets I would have calories and protein intake against every meal, etc. Quite easy to maintain. Let's save our throats for the main meal today. Okay.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So again, thank you very much for coming, Michelle. I
Absolutely.
100% appreciate it. It's so great to connect, and I can already feel like we're vibing out very well, and I think it's gonna be fantastic to talk to you today. And we'll be talking about conversion rate optimization, but with a twist, and that's your twist, because you have a very unique background, and that impacts or influences the way you approach conversion rate optimization. I would love if we could start with your story. How did you get here?
Yeah, it's a bit of a an interesting path, and it seems very unrelated, but at the end of the day, it all
Uh
connects.
huh.
So
Yeah.
I'm actually Australian. I come from Perth, Western Australia, and I started out my career as an economist. I worked for a multinational energy company in Australia, and I ended up becoming the lead economist for a $50 billion project. And it was, such an
Whoa.
amazing experience. I have so many incredible connections and peers who I still keep in touch with to this day. But it was very clear to me that I was not really inspired by big corporate, and that really wasn't the path I wanted for myself. That
Yeah.
was very, very apparent. So I was like, all right, we've got to make changes. So I this was before the digital nomad thing was like really blowing up, but I kind of saw like, wow, through tech, you can really do some pretty cool stuff. Like I was really into like really interested in establishing a location independent lifestyle for myself, and I was like, why not have a crack? So I actually just quit my job. Everyone called me crazy,
Oh
and
yeah. I bet.
I packed up my bags and I moved to Bali, and I actually founded a company that worked in design and production quality management for a lot of e-commerce companies, setting up shops so they wouldn't have to fly to like Asia and Bali to sit in the factories and physically monitor their goods and things like that and get all the technical specifications written up. So that
Mm,
was really great. And through that, I was really able to also fulfill my dream of traveling the world. So I had traveled to around 55 different countries, which was super amazing. And eventually, I actually ended up selling the company to an agency in London.
mm,
And I'd really felt like I had established life on my own terms by then. And I thought, time for a new adventure. I'd like to move to New York and be part of the tech scene there. So I did. And so I moved to New York and I ended up co-founding a video compression startup with two guys from MIT. And
hey.
we got venture backing, and it was a really fascinating experience. It definitely did not work out like how we had envisioned in the end, and in the end we did fail. But I
Mm,
learned so many valuable lessons from that experience that I carry with me to this day. And so after that experience, a lot of people in my network from various parts of the world and in New York started reaching out to me, and they were just like, "Hey, can you help with growth marketing for my startup?" And I
mm,
was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." And really organically, I just eventually morphed and grew into a small boutique growth agency for early stage, scale stage SaaS startups. And so yeah, that's what we do now. And I relocated to Paris with my now husband, which is where I am today. And Yeah, it's really great. So nowadays, I spend 100% of my time focused on growing early stage, scale stage startups through experimentation and CRO.
It's beautiful that on the common denominator um, for all your successes or journeys and everything is basically networking and connections. And I bet that throughout all those years, as you quit the job, moved to Bali, and then started working on your own stuff, and eventually moved to the video compression startup company, that all kind of helped you build um, connections with people that now feed into your consulting business, right? For conversion rate optimization, and I think this is the beauty of it. It's that's the wealth I think that you earn as you just help other people, as you exist in the space. I don't know if you agree, but in my opinion, the agency is basically relationships. Like that.
Hmm.
That's how you exist. You have connections, and you seem to have done really well on that front. I must say. You mentioned that the video compression company failed ultimately, which is again nothing to be embarrassed about. That's actually that probably served you well looking back. Um, what kind of lessons did you learn from that?
Absolutely. One thing that I really learned was the importance of your go-to market motion and product market fit, and
Hmm.
how marketing and sales is really needed in an early stage company. So for us, we really struggled to commercialize and really reach that product market fit. We looked at multiple go-to market motions, but we couldn't really find the right path forward. But at some stages, marketing would be needed, at some stages, sales would be needed. For long stretches of time when they were working on product, none of these skill sets would be needed that much at all. And I think that's the nature of early stage companies. And it made me realize the importance of being able to be flexible. And I think that's a lot of the value that fractionals and agencies bring to the table
Hmm.
nowadays with early stage and scale stage companies, is that you are able to provide that flexibility.
Are you familiar with the person called Mr. Beast?
I am quite a little bit. I don't follow him on YouTube, but I have seen him around.
Yeah, probably many people have. There's one memo that was published on LinkedIn, and in that memo, he says that consultants are literally hacks for life, or code cheat codes, because they walk the path before you, and all you have to do is just ask rather than invest all the money to go through that path yourself. So it just reminded me when you were explaining all of it, and
Absolutely.
yeah, just a little tangent, but that's great. So okay, so you have the product market fit lesson. Okay, you've been through all of that in your life. How did that impact your approach to CRO? And what,
Yeah, that's an
especially in those
interesting
like
question.
high stakes context, I imagine.
Hmm.
Just take us through it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. For me, CRO, the way that I see CRO, conversion rate optimization, is really pushing a user from one step to another in the process. So
Hmm.
getting them from point A to point B to point C, and really knowing exactly what steps you are pushing them towards. I think that with all my different experiences, I think that it's important to see CRO in context. At the end of the day, a business is about effectively creating value and
Yeah.
making revenue impact.
Yeah.
And so CRO needs to tie into that, into what stage that the business is in. And CRO is going to look very, very different for an early stage company compared to a giant multinational. And so I think being able to take a step back and see the bigger picture, and I say this because when we start to work with companies, a lot of teams have preconceived ideas of what they see CRO as being and things that they want to test, whether that's like different colors on the CTA buttons or different headlines and things like that. And I think that one really key thing for us is to just take a step back
Mm-hmm.
and to actually look through all your data from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel, line by line, and just to understand what is actually going to make revenue impact here and what is just nice to have. And one thing to notice that, in the early stage, startups community, people are under the pump. They are super busy. They are super busy expanding the company. They don't have
Yeah.
time to sit and gather all the data from all the
Mm,
different analytics platforms, from your user recordings, your product analytics, etc., etc. So very often we find that teams haven't had the time or space to actually take that step back and take that 4 week period to really look through their data and the full set of conversion rates and how they're performing relative to each other. And without that key piece, it's very difficult to order and say, hey, what's going to make the biggest revenue impact first, and examine that in line with your unit economics and say, well, actually, what do we need our conversion rates to be to get the unit economics that we're really looking to achieve? So I think seeing it from the lens with a bird's eye view with the idea of revenue impact is one of the key things that I really focus on.
uh, I will circle back to data in a second because that's a huge topic for me as well. I absolutely love data, getting data, and making sense out of data, and that's a huge thing for me. But you said conversion rate optimization is just essentially moving people from A to B, from B to C, etc., until they convert. It's in the name. Uh, and then you in the following sentence you mentioned funnels. So I assume these two work together in parallel somehow, or uh, one is like a context or maybe segregation tool, and the other one is tool that pushes people between categories within the funnel. Like how those two, what's the difference? How these two work together? Can you speak to that a bit? Does that make sense? The question.
Yeah, I think funnels is a very interesting concept nowadays because you have people doing all sorts of actions on
Yeah.
your site depending on how they learned about your company. And so we see people who hear about a company or a brand through word of mouth. They tend to like, or a very trusted source of recommendation. They come in, they sign up straight away. That trust was built even before they hit the
Mm,
website. So that
mm.
conversion rate optimization, it's not really that relevant, is it? If they're they're
Yeah,
just
true.
coming, they're a one-click converter, and that's
Mm.
that's what we love, and that's what we love to try to build top funnel, these channels that really push these high value recommendations word of mouth. But if you're doing Google Ads, someone's never really heard of your brand and they're evaluating your company at the same time with five other SaaS solutions with very similar software features. They'll probably be going through your website and comparing prices,
Sure.
comparing features, and things like that. And you'll tend to see typical journeys that people have depending on what they're looking on and who your ICP is. And from there, you can get an idea of the patterns that people who typically convert exhibit and patterns that people who don't exhibit. And you want to try and bridge the two. You want to try and push people to take the steps that are associated typically with people who do convert.
Do I understand it correctly then that conversion rate optimization can work on many levels of zoom? Like, so you can really zoom in and really obsess about the color of a button, but you can also zoom out and look at the page layout or even the buyer, so user journey through the website. Is that so? Is that how should we think about conversion rate
Yeah,
optimization?
that's a really interesting question. I actually don't know if there are like gods of the CRO definition.
Uh-huh.
For me, because I tend to look at everything from a revenue perspective and just really pushing as many people as we can to our desired action of purchase. I see it in a very holistic way. So when I see conversion rate optimization, I literally just see it through the lens of a definition of just moving one person from A to B. So, for example, and whether or not this definition aligns with what the gods of
Oh
CRO
yeah, sure.
want to say, not sure, but this is just the way I see it. So, for example, depending on your go-to-market motion, CRO can look very different. So, for example, let's say you are a sales-led or a sales-assisted go-to-market motion. So you're not really product-led.
Hmm.
You've got a sales team, and um, one way that I see CRO is pushing people to consume the right content that's going to enable them to make the right decisions. So, looking at buyer enablement content and also rate optimization in terms of like helping people move through the right stages of the funnel. So, just knowing about the product to understanding what it can really do for them to comparing it with other solutions, and in the sales process as well, moving them from inquiring to doing a demo to closing the deal and having the right revenue enablement content in play is there as well. And there are conversion rates there as well. Like you want to move someone from a demo to a close, and the steps that happen in between in terms of the pipeline, I also see that as an optimization game that needs to be really, really carefully managed. And so in that way, I think that, for these types of go-to market motions, a lot of the CRO is really like done by like a strong revenue enablement team, whereas for a product-led growth motion, a lot of CRO is done on the marketing and website front. And so, optimizing conversion rates on landing pages and movements from free trial to paid and so on.
Okay. Two things that came to my mind. Have you ever come across the term macro conversions and micro conversions? Is that something you use at all in your line of work, or you just don't worry about it because it's all the same?
I try not to put too many definitions in my line of work purely because we work with so many different companies where I think it's important to use language that everyone really understands. So I just try to tie language to the key KPIs that people are trying to drive. So, for example, signups, demos, leads, prospects,
Yeah, absolutely.
etc. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm glad you specified the way you see CRO, because it's exactly what makes you unique. That's so good. We've got this. When I think about web design, and when people think about web design, we all get different definitions. I mean, some people, web design is even CRO. To some people,
Mm.
web design is actually the act of coding. To other people, is building design systems. This is all umbrella term web design, and I'm pretty sure it's quite similar in your world. So it's very important to, as you said, tie the definition to the KPIs for people who are seeking your services, because they will know exactly what you can help with, even though the world is so vast. So that's great. Next point I wanted to mention and ask you about. I think I read that you help not only B2B SaaS but also e-commerce. Is that right?
Yeah, sometimes. Actually, next year. Sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry about it at all. Actually, I'm gonna take a sip too. It's fine.
Next year we'll be focusing purely on SaaS. So this year we focus purely, mainly on SaaS, but we do have a few clients who actually bridge in between the two. They do B2B and they do B2C,
Oh,
and so sometimes we do a bit of B2C work, but it's not our specialty. But it's still CRO work we have to do there as well.
absolutely. I mean, they both have customers that needs moving in the funnel,
Hmm.
so that makes sense. Have you
Yeah,
noticed any differences though?
I do think they're very different worlds, and there are two fundamental differences that I see. The first one is that the customer journey tends to be quite different. So for
Oh,
e-commerce, the journey tends to be hear about a product from a friend, hear about it from social media, or come into the product page, check out, purchase, and the decision maker, typically in a B2C world, typically you're dealing with one or two decision
yeah.
makers. And so your sales cycle is going to be not too long compared to a B2B cycle. So in B2B land, it can be very, very different. So for example, the customer journey can look very different. It's like, am I problem aware? Do I know solutions out there? Who else is going to help me make this decision? I might have a buying committee of 6 to 12 other people buying with me,
Yeah.
and instead of like maybe a $100 or 1,000 product that I would purchase in B2C, maybe I'm looking at purchasing $100,000 or $1 million piece of software. And so the buyer journey is completely different, and you'll be looking at multiple segmented ICPs in that buying committee who might have different challenges and pain points that need solving. And so I think a lot of CRO work in e-commerce tends to be around really good UI UX design. A lot of focus on the checkout. A lot of people bounce on that
Mm.
actual checkout page. You know that for a fact too. And a lot of focus on really getting people to move to that upsell, cross sell, subscriptions, bundles, and optimizing the LTV and retain like that the the LTV of a customer. Whereas with a B2B, sometimes you're looking at a sales cycle of, 6 weeks, six months, and
Months,
so
yeah. I was about to say it's more like 6 months, definitely. Um, you got no idea how many times I got cold feet at the checkout. So that's your role to to prevent me from getting those. And
absolutely.
it's a fact that in B2C and e-commerce, you are essentially speaking with a person who holds the wallet,
Yeah,
and that changes the dynamic. I mean, all you have to say is this is the product, this is what's gonna look like, this is the
yeah.
shipping, this is the return policy, these are
hmm
the
It's
reviews from
it's
other.
much more exactly. It's
Yeah,
much more transactional, and the CRO guidelines are fairly well known and they're fairly well documented. I think the B2B world is so much more nebulous, and B2B behaviors can change as well. They do change like year over year, and so you have to stay up with that in terms of like maybe 20 years ago, people were happy to learn about products through recommendations or through researching online, and then they'd want to do that final sale in person, meet, shaking hands, having a real dinner. Since COVID, we saw that shift, and people are, companies can close $1 million deals now without actually meeting people in person. But even further now, I
that's
feel
true.
like we're entering like a era of content saturation and SaaS saturation. Like there's so many SaaS companies in each vertical now that didn't exist 10 years ago that I think buyer behaviors are also going to shift again next year to as a response to this.
I really like this contrast, transactional and nebulous. That's very nice. Well done. Really cool. uh, okay, so that's I guess that sums up the e-commerce part. We established is rather straightforward, and today's talk is more about B2B SaaS. And I'm glad you mentioned the sales cycle. I have B2B SaaS web design agency, and I can see that we sometimes get clients 6 months to even 12 months after the initial inquiry, and it's tough. Like, I mean, to sustain that deal, and just to make everyone on the clients end happy, and just to be on top of things. I mean, because things fade away. Like, you might
Yeah.
have CRM,
Time kills
etc.
deals.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I think April Dunford said that 40% of deals fail to indecision, and you being an external partner, I mean, you can only influence the company so much. Like, I mean, that's all you can do. You can answer questions, you can chase them up, but I mean, you can't hold their hand all the time every day just to learn what's going on.
Absolutely. I
Wh-
mean, as they say, you can't convince someone that they're sick unless and to go to the doctor, and unless they actually think they're sick and they're going to take themselves to the doctor. And so I think there is an element of that in these deals.
yeah, yeah, definitely. In websites, and I mean, where most conversion rate optimization happens, are put in a very tricky position, because, as you said, the sales cycle in B2B, the length of it stems from the fact how many decision makers on the client side exist, how many people have the power to veto the deal, how many people have to sign off, financial strategy, marketing, I mean, sales, like,
hmm
crazy number of people. As you said, 6 to 12, and I actually, yeah, I second that statement easily. um how do you where do you even start to optimize the website? How do you find the problem, like, as in, maybe which stakeholder isn't happy with the information on the website, or what's the thorn in the neck? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
can you speak to that a bit? I'm lost, and I don't even know where to put the finger on it.
Yeah, no, I understand. So I think just to draw a delineation, once they're through the door, and you've got their email, you know their name, I think that's really part of the sales and revenue enablement
Okay.
team's domain, although like, a lot of support can be given there. But they've got their own strategies and tactics to move people through their pipeline. But in terms of the website, let's talk about that, because when you have a sales led go to market motion or a sales assisted go to market motion, you will be probably speaking to an ICP that this ICP, let's say they're a decision maker, they're a product lead, they're a marketing lead, they're a dev lead, whichever,
Yeah.
they might have a lot of different preferences in the way that they like to consume information. Or, if your ICP could either be a marketing or a product person, they might have slight nuances in the problem that they're looking to solve. And so it's a great question like, how do we build websites and really clear messaging that is going to be able to resonate at the same time with these nuances in the in and slight segmentations in the ICP that we have. And so I have two ways I like to tackle this. One's
Okay.
a sexy way, and a sexy tech enabled way, and one's a more classic, fundamental, not as sexy way. But
Okay.
I think there are actually some really powerful tools which have been developed to solve these issues. Actually, and some of my favorite tools are Mutiny and User Led. So Mutiny is quite interesting. You can connect Mutiny, integrate Mutiny with Clearbit and get all the enrichment data, and it can actually read who is coming onto your site. So the geography, the vertical, how big the company is, anything that's in the Clearbit data, they can get. The how like what sometimes they can even read your actual role title. And so when you have all that information, Mutiny can then you can work with the software to very easily tailor your website to what you want them to see. So for example, let's say you're selling to slightly smaller companies, like mom and pop companies, and larger companies, and you want the larger companies to take a demo and you want the smaller companies to do a free trial. You don't want the smaller companies to do a demo because you haven't got that big of a sales team, and so you can't be utilizing their limited time like that. And so with a tool like Mutiny, you can detect how big are these companies that are coming in, and you can say, look, for companies smaller than X boundary, we only show an option to do a free trial. We remove an option to do a demo, and
Ah.
vice versa. And there's all sorts of things you can tailor to really help conversion rate optimization there as well. From your headline, like you can call out the specific user and their pain points. You can tailor your logos. So don't show enterprise logos to small businesses. Small show the logos that they're familiar with, and vice versa, showing vertical specific logos to the verticals you're targeting, showing the right testimonials and so on, showing the right case studies. So a lot can really be done with a really powerful solution. It's not the
Ah.
cheapest software on the block,
That
so
sounds like
it's not
yeah.
it's possibly not something that a company with $1 million revenue would go out of the gates and get a license for. But I think when you are dealing with multiple ICPs and multiple go-to market motions, it's a really really great solution. But otherwise you've got your classic solution, which is just having
Okay, okay, let's try it for the cheap one. Yeah, okay, go for it. Yeah.
the classic solution of having a very strong idea of the different segmented ICPs that you're targeting, what they need to see, and having very clearly segmented navigation and information on your page. So, for example, like you can drop down menu and segment by vertical, by use case,
Hmm.
have different case studies for your different ICPs, and really make sure your website is can cater for all of these use cases, and so people can self-identify and easily navigate and find the information that they need.
Okay. With the sexy approach, I think you mentioned you have two tools, and you mentioned Mutiny. Did I miss the second one, or was it the clear bit?
Mutiny and user led. User
User
led.
led.
User led's mainly for ABM motions, I would say. So when you're targeting large enterprise accounts, I think Mutiny is a little bit more flexible if you've got a PLG and sales assisted growth motion.
Okay, I wonder how this works with the GDPR, by the way. I know we had this discussion with ICO, the Information Commission Officer in the UK, in regards to A/B testing, and you essentially can't run an A/B test without planting a cookie, and you can't plant a cookie until the user consents. So what happens is that the user sees the A variant when they land on the website, and when they accept cookie, the whole page flashes to the B variant. So now that the experiment failed, I mean, because the user saw both versions rather than just one. So I wonder how this works with the personalization tools like Mutiny. But this sounds very exciting. That this is very good. I will definitely read up on it.
Yes, I think GDPR laws are still a little bit different in Europe versus the US versus
Oh, I bet.
different parts. Yeah, so I think we've got a bit of flexibility in other parts of the world, which we might not have moving forward in Europe. And, we're just going to have to adapt based on first party data and first party cookies as much as we can.
I think so. When we go to the no sexy version, we essentially rely on our own research and our own understanding of the market. And when you say kind of create those the drop downs for verticals for personas, you mean like, for example, who we work with, and then you have marketers and sales. Is that what you have in mind?
Yeah, yeah, basically, like understanding I guess the key differentiator that you're going to use to segment your ICP. So, for example, if marketers and product folks have the same challenge and pain point that they're solving, perhaps you don't want to segment on that. Perhaps you want to segment by vertical, or perhaps, your solution's the same by vertical and it's going to change by role. And so you're going to, drop down and have different pages by role. So I think really understanding what makes your product what's your value proposition for your different segments of ICPs and how are you segmenting them? I think that's really, really key and really core. I think a lot of companies guess a lot when it comes to their
That rings a bell.
ICP.
Yeah.
No, we think they do this. We're
Yeah.
pretty sure this is our customer. Very classic. It's not common for us to walk in and start working with a company where they've got a very well researched and very well documented ICP where they know their current behaviors as of the last 12 to 18 months. And so it's really critical as well to actually just know your ICP and remove that guesswork. So we've got a very particular framework and methodology where we actually go out and we research and we speak to your customers one to one, and we have a set of specific questions used to unearth, whatever part of the CRO process we're working on. But it's really
Huh.
important to understand, like, what is the key value proposition for them, what problems are they solving, like what's their fears, uncertainties, and doubts. That, I mean, a developer and a marketer have completely different, tend to have
Yeah.
very different attitudes when it comes
Absolutely.
when it comes to things like privacy and security and things like that. So it's really key to remove that guesswork and have that qualitative data on hand. I think a lot of companies collect quantitative data, but in the world of CRO, you have quantitative data and qualitative data.
Hmm.
Quantitative data tells you what is happening. It doesn't tell you why it's happening. That's when you need that qualitative data. So
True.
you need both pieces to really have some effective implementation and execution when it comes to CRO.
It to me, it's very fascinating that you would conduct this kind of research as part of CRO. I don't know. How do you think about that kind of insight coming from product market fit rather than the website research? Because I know maybe is how I see a website. To me, website is essentially a storefront, I guess, of what the company is already about. Everything website is, it trickles down from the top, from product market fit, from all the business strategy, etc. I would imagine the recognition of ICPs and the value proposition that speaks to them, that comes from early in the process rather than website optimization. um, do you ever think of that data as a prerequisite for a good CRO, or do you specifically search for companies that haven't done that yet, and you therefore take it on yourself to conduct that kind of research before you do any CRO?
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, it's a prerequisite for any significant growth work or any CRO. And the reason is that we really need to know the key value. Well, first of all, we
Hmm.
need to make sure that who you understand to be your customer is actually correct, because we've done some
Trust but
research.
verify. Absolutely.
Yes, I mean, we've worked with companies before, and they'll be 5, 10, 15, $50 million, and they'll be like, okay, these are our customers. And we'll be
Hmm.
like, all right, let's go out and verify that. And let's actually look into your product data of who are your top paying customers, who are the guys who are men and the women who are being retained year on year, who are the companies and the logos who you love and are using the product day in, day out. And sometimes what we find is very the assumptions that a company can make can be very, very different to what your revenue data is actually telling you. So for example, we worked with a company and they said, our product is really aimed for folks in North America who have a low credit score,
Hmm.
whose business has a low credit score. And we looked at their revenue data and we actually saw like actually a lot of your top super users, they've got a very high credit score. So your assumptions may not necessarily align. And so why is this important? It's important to know because now that we know that, that's going to change our assumption on what we know to be the value. Because if you assume, oh, it's for businesses with a low credit score,
Hmm.
you're going to think, well, the value is because you know they have problems with accessibility. When that's not really the case. If they can access lots of different options, then what is the true value proposition, the true benefits that we're bringing to the table for this other segment of users? And it's really important to understand that. And now, once we understand that messaging, we can go out to market and build some really effective growth marketing with some really effective messaging in these channels and have a really effective website where above the fold we're really calling out who is this for and what can it do for you. And also we also, one key thing in conversion rate optimization is identifying fears, uncertainties, and doubts. You know, that moment where you're about to buy something and you're like, oh, wait, let me
Yep.
think.
Yep.
Like,
I
is it
know
really,
that.
is it really worth it? Like,
Yeah.
what is actually going through someone's mind? And you can't get this of quantitative data. It's impossible. The only way you get insights into what people are really thinking, what's inside of their heads, is through qualitative data. And so we love like voice of the customer research methodologies and frameworks
Mm.
because we really love to focus on just asking customers very specifically, like, what's your fear here? What's your uncertainty here? What are you doubting? What is your skepticism? Tell me everything. And just hearing it straight from the horse's mouth is really, really powerful because you can then play that back on your website and people are like, oh, yeah, I was exactly thinking that. And then you can then provide that reassurance that you need to provide in
Hmm.
order to move them from point A to point B.
We are heading with the discussion towards data, making decisions with confidence or any kind of confidence on the spectrum, which is great because that's exactly what I wanted to dive in with you. Um, how do you think of assumptions in conversion rate optimization? Do you consider them dangerous, necessary? When is it enough to make a
Mm-hmm.
decision? Have you got any high level ideas about those?
So when we work with,
It is okay. Yeah. Take your time, no problems. I feel the same way, but
when we work with really talented founders and really talented teams with very strong business acumen, quite often that business acumen is tied to very strong business intuition. And so when you
mm,
say assumptions, I like to trust the intuition of these teams and these decision makers because if they've been speaking and dealing with these customers day in, day out for years, they might not be able to articulate on a piece of paper in 7 words or less, like like the taglines and things like that would be necessary to attract these folks. But what they can do is they know exactly what's going on inside of their heads. So I
mm,
think that intuition and business acumen is a very core part of early stage companies. It's just a fact. Sometimes you've just got nothing but a very good hunch that this is the reason why, and
yeah,
you've just got to move with it. But when we do have data, then I think we can move away from that world of assumptions. And I do see a lot of assumptions as effectively guessing. And when we do have the data, we can remove that step of the guesswork through looking at what the data quantitatively and qualitatively is going to tell us.
yeah, and I guess it's quite difficult to reach 100% uncertainty, but as long as the data moves you towards 100% certainty, um, on the scale, that's great. I mean, that's exactly what you need, and I think I read it in a book, measuring intangibles by Douglas. I can't remember exactly, but there's something in there. Um, it, he proved that literally when you don't know anything, and he used statistics for this. When you don't know anything, almost um sorry, when you know nothing, almost anything will tell you something.
Yes,
In a sense that when you literally don't know anything, any data is more than no data, and you
exactly.
should trust that data because no data is worse. And so as you move on that chart towards the certainty, 100% of certainty, getting more and more data becomes more and more expensive. So at some point you have to have the decision point at which it makes sense to make decision one way or another, because otherwise you going into a loss with the research method, with the risk assessment, all of that. So I assume that, and again, assumption, this comes as part of your job as well, right? When you do any kind of research, you have to at some point say, okay, look, I think we know enough. It
Yeah.
does that ring a bell at all? Is that something you face yourself as a challenge when working with founders?
Yeah, look, I think when a business owner or a founder, a founding team has built a company from zero to like 5, 10, around 10 million in revenue,
Hmm.
I think for me, that's a point where we might not have all the data that we need, but they've got pretty solid business acumen and very solid business instincts to have gotten the business to that point. And I think we can rely on um, what we can gather from the quantitative and qualitative data, but we can also rely on the instincts of, what do we need to do next? And I think things aren't working out here. We need to focus on this part of the funnel, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And so I think that's fine. I think as business grow larger, the 50, 100 million mark and revenue mark and more, I think that's when we do have the data to look into and say, actually, here are some things you didn't know. Because the thing with data is that it can tell you stuff that you didn't know you did not know. Um,
Yes.
so quite a lot of the time we'll unearth insights and teams will be like, oh, we had absolutely no idea, or no one was really looking into that. That was a bit of a gap in our assessment process. Whether that's be people falling through the cracks at a certain stage of the funnel, like for example, like having really low drop off rates on some key pages. Maybe
Mm,
it's a demo page, maybe it's a certain onboarding stage that when you still got a small team, as I mentioned, it's sometimes hard to gather all the data for each and every step and see relatively to each other where are people dropping off. And sometimes teams aren't aware that they've got a 90% drop off, on a very particular step, which shouldn't be a
no.
90% drop off. It should be a 10% drop off. And
Sure.
so it really helps illuminate what's happening. I think as companies grow bigger and bigger and there's more people working on more things, it's difficult for people to have a bird's eye view of how everything is performing over the funnel. So I think this is where
Hmm.
data really comes in to tie in that cohesive picture.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in small companies, you see like the 1 to 10 million range, like generally the business owner knows what's going on at most stages of the business
Okay.
at
So
that
so
point.
the more the bigger company is, the the role of data shifts, and it becomes this kind of anchoring or grounding tool for business decisions, right? I mean, it essentially leads the way you make decisions in a company because you can't know everything about the company of that size. That makes sense. What do you say to people? I mean, you said small company 1 to 10 mil. What do you say to people who have companies 0 to 1 mil? Literally, those moms and pops that want to optimize their website for any kind of conversion, having a low traffic, probably low enough, probably not high enough to
Mm-hmm.
reach any significant results. Like, what could you say to them? How to put a finger on something that will make the most impact with least effort?
That's a really great question, and we do get this question quite a lot actually, and we have worked with some companies who have gone from 0 to 1 mil and
Okay,
much
okay.
more actually. So, I have a two-step process for this. So the first step I take is to just once again go through and do a full conversion rate analysis,
Hmm.
top to bottom. So this is a step that we also do alongside our ICP analysis and that. Uh, like bird's eye view of how your conversion rates are performing. We take a step back and we say, like, look, what are the campaigns that you're running? Like, are you doing ads? Are you doing partnerships, et cetera, et cetera? what are these conversion rates from these channels and then coming into your site? What is the conversion rate, from one page to another, from one point to another, and just really calculating
Mm.
step by step. And then as you take a step back, you'll normally, for companies under $1 million, there's normally one or two big areas where everyone is dropping off.
Okay, what are those?
Okay, very, very classically, I'd say probably it depends on the strength of the founders and the founding team. So, companies founded by developers tend to have very different strengths to companies founded by like product and marketing people. So what we tend to find um, is that companies founded by marketing and salespeople, they have very strong like marketing campaigns. They have very strong website performance, but there tends to be quite a bit of a drop off between that free trial or what demo
Hmm.
to paid conversion rate. And at the end of the day, you need to look at your unit economics as well and understand what is your break even? What is the minimum that you need to actually make money out of this thing? What do you need that conversion rate to be? And so you can easily go through and do this analysis and benchmark and say, okay, these are the things that we need to work on to move the needle. And with developers, they'll have very strong product usage, but sometimes the messaging on the site will be a little bit confusing.
Okay, okay, I hear you. I have a software engineering background, and I can relate to that. Yeah, my biggest struggle has been always the messaging, because I am very nerdy. I have weird sense of humor, and it just doesn't land with people on the website. So that's been a challenge. Although I soften up a bit. So I think if you go to Nerdcow website, it's not that bad. I would say it
No,
works.
I love the NerdCal website. I think it's absolutely excellent.
Really? Okay, thank you. Okay, I've learned my lessons then. Yeah.
No, I think you're all good. I think you're all good as a business owner. I think you learn so many skills. But yeah, no, I think so that's the first step, identifying what is actually going to move the mark for revenue.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you hear all this advice like test the color of your CTA button, test your different
Yeah.
CTA, and it's like,
Not
guys,
now.
come on.
Not now, man. Yeah, you've got bigger
Exactly.
problems to worry about, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like if your conversion rate from free trial to paid is like 3% and you need it to be 20% to have positive unit economics, you know where to start. So I think that exercise of really knowing what's going to make revenue impact is really key. And then just going through and using qualitative data, because quantitative data is quite hard to get at this point. Qualitative data, so just speaking to your customers and just understanding like what would it take for you to convert, or like um what's the one thing that's stopping you from moving forward at this
Oh,
point
I love this
right now.
question. Yeah.
And just really gathering the why and then just going through and making all these changes at once, because when you're under $1 million in revenue, you don't have a lot of resources, so chances are a lot of the things that you're executing are fit for purpose, but they aren't quite up to the best practices you could have. And best practices, in tech and UI UX design and CRO, they're fairly well known. These principles are fairly
Hmm.
well known now. SaaS has been around for a while now, so there's quite a fair few Bibles written out there of what you need to be doing in terms of best practices. So I don't think you even need to be A/B testing on VWO or anything like that
No,
right now, because
probably
you
not.
can you can very clearly see where your site or where your funnel is sitting and compared to best practices, and you can really just figure out how you're going to bring that up to scratch. The key issue normally is limited resources. So
Hmm.
we only have so much time, so many people, only these skill sets. Like, how do we select what we can effectively do to move the needle? And I think that's really the key challenge for business moving from 0 to 1.
Okay. So just to sum up, the first step is really to zoom out and see, as you said, what moves the needle. And you do that by going out and asking the customers what stops them from buying. It's essentially
Well,
that simple.
to see what moves the needle, I would make sure you also know your unit economics. I mean, this seems really simple, but
Unit
a
of
lot of
economics.
yeah, a lot of teams don't quite sit down and really just say, hey, if we're acquiring users for like $30, they're staying with us and paying $90, like, or they're staying with us and they're only paying $40, and there's conversion rates here of like 5%. It's kind of like how's everything going to add up? Because very typically one of the key contributors to revenue impact in terms of how your cost of acquisition is your conversion rate. Like if you've got a landing page which well, okay, let's say it costs $100 for you to get someone onto your landing page,
Okay.
and you've got a conversion rate of 2% versus 15%, your final cost of acquisition to get them into a free trial and then to convert is radically different depending on that conversion rate. So I think you really need to understand how your conversion rates are sitting against your unit economics, and what do you need these conversion rates to really be.
Okay. Okay. I'm doing math in my head. It's fine. Okay, that works. When I asked you the question, I think you did. Did you mention you have two things?
Oh yeah, and then from
Yeah.
there, you've identified the problem. Really, you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, okay, this is the issue. How do we go out and solve that issue? Don't guess. Do qualitative research. Speak to your customers. That's step number two. And then I guess step number three is to do the damn thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when you need developers and designers, basically. Yeah. Okay. That's very okay. That's good. That's good. I like it. It's very refreshing to hear how, I guess, simple it is, but at the same time powerful. And I mean that I think that's what we are all looking for in help from people like you. Just come into the room and make it simple, make it understandable, and just get cracking with it. Because from the founder's perspective, I mean, I'm speaking from my experience. When I look at problem of a conversion rate, it's so overwhelming because there's many things moving in the landscape. You can't even know what to choose for as the first order of business to fix. It's just, is it the copy, is it the colors, is it the size, is it the
Yes.
traffic intent? Like mind blown, honestly. So I think the your advice is to simply stop, take a step back, and look again from top to bottom of your funnel. Does it make sense, like holistic sense? Do you talk to the people you need to talk, and probably focus like 1 2 ICPs rather than 10, because you're early
Yes.
stage, you don't want to over,
Preferably once.
preferably one, exactly, yes. Think about the campaigns, partnerships, page to page conversion, all of that, but through the lens of that high level strategy. And I think, again, this is very refreshing to hear. um, I know you're a huge uh, fan of partnerships.
Yes, I
Can
love
you?
partnerships.
Yeah, I mentioned partnerships just a while ago. Could you speak to that? Why is that? Like, why? What happens
Yeah,
there?
no, this is a really, really great question. So actually someone on our team, Lauren, she's super talented. She actually worked at Shopify and helped scale the partnerships motion
Oh,
in the USA and UK. And so obviously she's our partnerships expert. But from my perspective, we love partnerships because fantastic conversion rates when you get recommendations from a very trusted source. In terms of growth marketing and conversion, when we look at conversion rates segmented channel by channel, and I'm just going to use a fintech client that we have, for example,
okay.
the PLG, free trial, and then move to paid, monthly subscription, classic. So when we look at their conversion rates, based per channel, like when people are coming in word of mouth, partnership recommendation, these folks are converting at like 50, 60%. They like
Whoa.
come in from free trial to paid, and they come onto the website. They're not even reading the website. They just come in,
Just
they just
click it. Yeah.
click free trial, convert 50, 60%.
Nice
And
and easy.
obviously this is my favorite segment.
Sure.
And then moving down, you get folks coming in from organic SEO. They come in and they convert from free trial to paid at around a 30% conversion rate. And we see them come in, and they come in, they look at the home page, they click on the pricing page, they click on the about page, they click
Yes.
on a couple of like they click around a little bit, and then after that they feel a little bit safer converting and they sign up for a free trial. And then at the bottom end, we have performance marketing and our Google Ads campaigns. And I think when someone hasn't heard about your brand beforehand and you're competing bottom funnel, you're competing with someone learning about your brand at the same time of learning about 20 other brands at the same
Mhm.
time. And they've probably got five other SaaS websites and they're just like comparing prices,
Yeah.
etc., etc. And this is where we do see the lower conversion rates. So for example, and like sometimes it's different on desktop and mobile as well. And so this is where we see struggle with the lowest conversion rates from free trial to paid. And this is where we see like they're not as engaged on the website as maybe some other channels are. And so I love partnerships because I think that cost of acquisition for a lot of companies is really going up. I don't think relying heavily on performance marketing is sustainable for a lot of companies, and you don't want to be beholden to only having these sorts of channels. I think diversification is key, and I think partnerships is such a fantastic route for growth for not all companies, but quite a fair few SaaS companies out there, where you can really see when you have a very strong partnerships motion, you see win rates soar through the roof. You see sales cycles get a
Wow.
heck of a lot shorter, and you see conversion rates just really lift, as if similar to if someone a trusted source recommends a product by word of mouth, and you're just like, yeah, I trust them, so let me
Eh,
like they're a successful startup doing a similar thing to me. I want to be just like them. I'm just going to use the same tools that they're
Basically, yeah.
using. Yeah.
Okay, so partnerships are, well, relationships. Okay, I mean that's what they are. And as with any relationship, it takes time to build it and to find it, to nurture it.
Partnerships is a
It's
long game.
it is a
It's
long game.
it's an
So
absolutely long game.
presumably it's expensive in terms of time,
Yeah,
and therefore not everyone can afford it.
absolutely. Yeah,
Correct?
what we see is that early stage, especially VC backed companies who are on a very
Yeah, take it. That's fine. Take a sip. That's fine.
who are on a very tight runway, um, partnerships motion just isn't going to be suitable for them. Especially also, your leadership team needs to have a mindset where they're going to be interested in growth in this way. Like they're not going to. It's like SEO in the sense as well, where you can't expect results from SEO in month one, month two,
Yeah,
or month three. It's a long game,
it is.
and so I think that partnerships work really well for executive teams and companies and founders that have a long-term vision and they want to build a company that's going to be highly profitable, sustainable, and they're not going to sort of like look at the results month by month and be when they're building out a new motion and being like what's happening. It takes patience to build something great, but when you can cast that long-term vision, I think it is very powerful for companies to be very profitable in the future when you're able to build these really strong foundations. Because at the end of the day, acquisition via partnerships, I mean, when you compare these costs of acquisition and
Hmm.
conversion rates compared to like say performance marketing or like meta ads, like it's like chalk and cheese. The costs involved are are very different. And I think SEO is a great example as well of like something that can be a long-term funnel where the actual cost of acquisition can be very low and very sustainable.
It is a great example. Absolutely, SEO. It is a long term game, and while you are playing that long term game, you need some kind of short term game to sustain you in the meantime. So presumably, for people who are interested in exploring the partnership avenue for conversions, which clearly, as you said, it pays off eventually, big time, like really big time. Something that they should do in the meantime to sustain the business, it's to essentially, again, do that CRO analysis, and explore opportunities that exist right now, and at the back of it just try to get those partnerships going. Is that how you would recommend people go for it?
Yeah, I think it's very unique depending on the stage of the business and what state they're in and how they're looking to acquire. For example, we work with VC-backed companies and we also work with self-funded companies who have never raised a dime of funding in their life. And so these strategies that we employ to in terms of acquisition, they're very different. And the cost of acquisition that companies are willing to bear can be very, very different. And so this also influences, what we would recommend, and also just what stage is the company in? Like, have they what existing growth channels have they already established, and what are the strengths of the team? Like, if a team fundamentally is not very good at sales, not very good at relationships, and they don't have that skill set on board, and then they're probably not going to invest in hiring in that, then I probably can't recommend a partnerships route, because you need someone in house to hold and build and put the elbow grease into
Yeah.
nurturing these relationships. So I think companies that suit a partnerships motion are those with a long-term vision, a long-term view. They do have folks in house who are going to help hold and nurture these relationships,
Hmm.
and they do have, other channels that they've already built out, because that's supplying them revenue, because this is going to take a bit of time. It might not produce a huge amount of revenue on in month one, but it can really pay off. And I think what a lot of folks don't realize is that a lot of very well-known large startups have grown very, very large and very, very profitable off the back of partnerships. I mean, um, Atlassian, Microsoft, these are two really great examples where a very large chunk of their revenue comes from partnerships. HubSpot, and then smaller companies like Gorgeous, that's Shopify, obviously, very
Yeah, definitely.
very significant chunks of their revenue. We're talking like these companies, we're talking anywhere from, like, 30-50% of their revenues
Crazy. Wow.
come from partnerships. And so it can lead to some serious levels of success long term, but you do need to be suited to be able to build that motion out
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah, for us, we are partnered with WP Engine, which is, I guess, another company that has a huge revenue from that side of business. I think they have hundreds of agencies reselling their service, which is, I mean, easy money, basically. Sounds good. We talked about relationships, data, research methods, frameworks, to like crazy, crazy stuff. It would be silly of me to not ask you about where this is all going with the advent of AI. Like, what trends for B2B SaaS, in 2025 and beyond, do you expect? Do you see happening? Have you got any predictions?
Oh, this is such a loaded question.
It is.
There are so many different opinions out there. I mean, actually, one of my good friends works at Google and actually helped lead the Gemini project. And then I've got, friends who are complete AI skeptics,
Oh
and
wow. Okay.
yeah, like, or it's like the investment is way too high for the gain that we're seeing in terms of like the infrastructure. Like, basically, we're in an AI bubble. If you look at
Mhm.
the level of money that's being poured into AI and the actual like commercial use cases that we're seeing out of it, they don't quite meet yet. And then I think the industry is expecting that AI will evolve and we will have these use cases which will see the commercial side of things pay off for the level of investment that's been poured in. But I think that is a big if. But, irrespective, I think every SaaS company that is a bit on the larger stage, I can see them releasing some sort of AI enabled or supported feature or new product. And I
Mhm.
think customers have come to expect a level of AI enablement. I think that in the future, I think it's just a level of like general expectation given the level of tools out there. And I think it's almost like keeping up with the Joneses. It's a competitive landscape. And, if you've got tools which are AI enabled and can do this and that, and you've got classic SaaS tools which aren't AI enabled, even if it's just the messaging and the marketing of it, I think consumers will prefer something that's more next generation. So I think that is at play as well. But yeah, I think that in terms of enabling differences and productivity in companies, I've seen a lot of studies out there. Some are saying, SaaS companies are not being able to, they're not seeing the huge gains in productivity that they thought they would see through AI tools. And then we've got other research out there saying, like, we were able to fire half our content team and replace our editor with like ChatGPT, etc., etc. So I think
Oh,
everyone's got quite varied experiences with AI. So I think it'll be interesting to see where the industry moves next. I mean, the only thing I know is that the level of investment that is being poured into AI is buoying the entire B2B SaaS industry up. I
hmm.
think it's really really large at the moment, and I'm just curious to see how that continues in the future, and if the bubble's going to burst, or what's going to happen next in the next few years.
Okay. I think, well, from web design perspective, AI definitely helps with mundane tasks, and will continue so, doing even better. I don't know, for example, like content creation, just the fact of content creation, it will be easier and faster to create content that is more personalized to the user that we are targeting. But I think it's still remains a human responsibility to connect with that human with certain, tone of voice, phrases, maybe some kind of jargon that only human to human can understand. Yeah, things like this. I mean, it won't eliminate the need for human to create anything conversion rate optimized, but it will certainly make it more efficient and quicker to deliver.
Mhm.
And I think that's that, like, I mean, human race has always
Yeah,
been that way. We've always been looking for ways to make things more efficient, faster, more
absolutely.
convenient, and yeah, that's what's going to happen in 2025.
I think though, in terms of employing the use of AI, I've seen a lot of like mass spray and pray outbound campaigns and things like that.
Hmm.
And I think in terms of employing AI effectively as marketers, as designers, what we really need to look at is how we're bridging the seller or the company closer to the user with AI instead of moving us further away from each other.
Mm.
And I think it's really key to understand how we're using AI in that process. I mean, I think like 8 years ago, chatbots were like the biggest thing. Like
Oh yeah,
chatbots were like so cool. Everyone was like obsessed with chatbots.
sure.
Chatbots were like gonna revolutionize and change the world. And I think we've seen very. I think every company has like an automated support system, like knowledge base,
Hmm.
and FAQ section that people can go to. That saves a lot of time. But at the end of the day, like customers and clients rave about really great customer support
Yes.
that's quick, that's rapid, that's human, because we're still using chatbots to bring us closer together. We're still leveraging technology to bring us closer together. And so when I see AI being employed, I think it's being misused when we're bringing ourselves further apart versus when we're leveraging AI to understand more about each other and to communicate better with each other.
I think understanding each other is also a huge part of the research, right? I when I was researching the market for my own business, I used AI like crazy just to make sense of the huge volumes of data that I was going through. Research, sorry, research papers, any review sites, like anything. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so much text to go through. It would just be silly of me to read all of it and make sense out of it. If I could just copy and paste to ChatGPT, ask to highlight the most important parts, and then work on that basis. I mean, I would essentially uh, take it away from there. But up until this point, I would use AI to help me condense it into something that I can mold further. Do you use AI in your research part as well?
Oh, I love AI. I love Anthropic. I love ChatGPT. I mean, I do agree that you do need a human at the end of the day to look through things, but I
Sure.
think it makes the process so much faster. I mean, sometimes, okay, I'll be really honest. Sometimes I'm super tired and I've got an email coming in and I'm like, how should I respond? Let me think of evaluate multiple ways I could respond. And typically it would take me 20-25 minutes to write a
Yes.
well crafted, well thought out email while I've evaluated several angles that I could have responded with. AI speeds that process up so much. I've been able to be so much more effective in my own communication, honestly. And there's even small things where, like, from a creative standpoint, when we're writing copy for something and we're like, okay, how many different angles can we produce this in? Like, can we write this in a serious tone, a humorous tone, a formal tone, like a playful tone? Using something like AI to help give creative ideas for like 20 different tones of voice, for example,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
saving so much time
it
rather than
does.
3 hours of like hardcore creative work. So I think it really speeds up for me the creative process a lot because it brings all that like idea conglomeration
Yeah.
in like to the table in like 2 seconds, which I previously would have had to spend hours thinking wide trying to do myself.
My biggest challenge with tone of voice in ChatGPT is that it doesn't have my tone of voice. And
Or you have to train
every
it.
time yeah, I mean, training and learning and all of that is just very tiresome. And I mean, I've used ChatGPT for so many messages right now. If you load up ChatGPT on my screen, on the left hand side you have all those chats that you had with it. There's like I can't even scroll to the bottom, there's so many of them. And every time I ask it to help me, I don't know, craft a LinkedIn hook or something like this, it
Yeah.
never sounds like me, and that's my problem. So I always have to take the output and make it sound like me. Otherwise, I just
Mhm.
don't feel like it's genuine message that I post online. But
It
that
needs your unique stamp, your unique
absolutely,
tone. Yeah, because it's at the end of the day, it's only regenerative of what already exists. So I
yeah,
think at the end of the day, a human does need to like put their stamp of uniqueness on it. Otherwise, people can tell that sort of like bland AI tone. That people can spot AI copy from a
yeah.
mile
The
away.
ambiguity of it is very glaring, I think. Wrong hyphens or maybe weird commas or um I always speak in so I always write in British English, and it would churn out American English. I'm like, no, this isn't me. So things like this I always have to look out for. But at the end of the day, it does like 50% job for me, and I do the other 50%, and I'm happy. It's okay.
Yeah,
So
it's
with
great.
that said, I mean, I think we can wrap it up here. I mean, we've been talking for about an hour, and it's been such a great conversation. And it's a topic that has so much depth. You could probably talk about it for the next 2 3 hours because all the conversion rate optimization is such an umbrella term. But is there anything that I could possibly ask? Oh, you would like to pitch in, tell us before we disconnect?
Yeah, great question. I think we're actually working on constructing a partnerships paper at the moment, where we're actually interviewing folks about their experiences with partnerships, and so yeah, if anyone's interested in evaluating whether a partnerships motion would be good for them, or if
Oh,
they've got
great!
one going and they're curious to see what can be done to improve it, we're actually interviewing a whole bunch of folks and leaders across Europe and North America at the moment.
Wow.
Yeah, would love to chat, and so yeah, feel free to get in contact and chat and yeah.
How people can get in touch with you in that for that?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can link it to this episode and or just shoot me an email. And yeah, we're also publishing a paper from some of the existing interviews that we've already done actually on best practices and some of the ways that we can scale from one-to-one relationships to one-to-many. And so yeah, we'll hopefully be releasing that in the next few weeks.
That sounds really good. I will definitely reach out for links after the call so I can put them
Okay.
in the notes of the podcast episode.
Okay.
And I think that's really it. Thank you so much, Michelle. That was great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tamar.
Thanks.
Thank you for your wonderful conversation.
A-
So yeah, I mean,
a- As long
super
as you
lovely.
liked it, that's great.
Super lovely to connect, and I know that we both were struggling with the voice bit today, but I really had such a great time, and yeah, hopefully we can connect again in the short term future.
Sure, sure. Now I'll be definitely in touch on LinkedIn and Growth Mentor, like everywhere really. I'm where everywhere where you are, I guess. So it won't be a problem to connect again, and hopefully with throats that are more suited for a long conversation. But
So,
it should be all right. So
all
yeah,
right, great stuff. So wonderful. Well, you enjoy your day in London, and I'll be in touch soon.
thanks, Michelle. I appreciate your
Cheers.
time very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye bye. See ya. Bye.